welcome to A Healthier You After 40. I'm Linda Ljucovic, and I'm here with Dina, a friend of mine and a speaker of the event. And she actually is the founder of Pain to Possibilities. And we're actually going to be reversing roles for this interview. She's going to be interviewing me. So before I pass it over, I just wanted to check in and just sort of say, I hope you guys are learning a ton from the summit. And that you've been able to take a few nuggets away and maybe even apply some of the things you've learned. That I think is a successful summit. Even it just can be one thing. And if you apply that one thing, that can have a huge ripple effect on your entire health. And so hope you're loving it. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Dina to introduce me and then take over the interview.
Right. Well, first of all, Linda, thank you for allowing me to do this. I am so excited because we have a great history and I've known you for a long, long time. I've watched your career and I tap into your knowledge on a regular basis. So I'm really, really glad to be doing this. So Linda Ljucovic is a holistic lifestyle coach and nutritionist, a yoga teacher, and a co-owner of Balance Point Health Center in Oakville. Through her own health challenges, Linda learned that the mainstream medical model doesn't always provide all the answers. Through persistence and a drive to find root cause, she learned that healing is possible when one gets proactive and then takes a mind, body, and spirit approach. She's the author of a book called Stress Less about PMS and is passionate about helping women balance their hormones and how to lead a more natural and toxin-free lifestyle. So welcome, Linda, to your own summit. So Linda, I've known you for a long time, and I do, like I mentioned, you've helped me out and also my family out a lot, but I'm really intrigued and I'd love for our participants to know, how did you become a nutritionist and a holistic coach?
Sure. So it was definitely a process, and oftentimes people get into wellness because of an event that they've experienced in their own lives that sort of make them question their own health or someone who they love, which was your story, Dina. And for me, it was a little bit of both. But one of the main reasons I dove into nutrition was really trying to figure out my own imbalances. And I didn't recognize all the imbalances I had at the time. So way back as a teenager, for example, I got my period late. I had tons of skin issues, acne, anxiety, tons of symptoms that weren't necessarily bad enough to really take action on. And I didn't really know what they were connected to, and saw a lot of doctors and generally was given some solutions. And over time, I wasn't really loving some of those solutions because they sort of stopped working for me. And I progressed. Things continued on in my 20s. I had some big stresses in my life. I wasn't really eating that healthy as I shifted to being a vegetarian. I just wasn't getting enough food. It was like the craze of low fat. So everything was high sugar. So I was eating horribly. And then I had some drama. Just my dad was passing of cancer. That was very stressful for me. I was on a really crazy, stressful team at work. And anyways, it just sort of all piled on at once. Right. And that was sort of a tipping point for me, where I became quite sick, and it sort of progressed. And then I tried to figure out solutions and figure out what was going on, saw a ton of doctors and didn't really get my answers that quickly, but started to delve into complementary health and started to get my answers. And that's kind of where it all began. And I just became so passionate about it because I learned through that health is so much more than just, food you eat or the exercise. And it's so holistic that we have to look at everything when it comes to health.
Absolutely. That's why I love your approach. You've always been so knowledgeable in the big picture stuff, like the whole 360, right? And that I think is a huge knowledge gain for the summit in general, is that you're really approaching it from a full 360. So who, Linda, would you say are your typical clients?
Well, today I get a lot of people looking for hormone help because of my history. And, so when I say hormone help, people are like, what do you mean hormones, right? But usually are people coming who maybe have gained weight and they can't seem to lose it. People who are feeling anxious, maybe they're having hot flashes, or they're just generally not feeling that well overall. but they've also, tried some things, and maybe those things aren't working with their doctor. And so they want to sort of dive a little bit more deeply and try to figure out a more holistic approach. So people who are sort of ready to make changes in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I have leaned into you quite heavily around my hormone health, and absolutely. And I also, you're helping out clients of mine as well, and then their approach to just general health, but also hormonal health too. So I know that there are many approaches to hormonal health, like you mentioned, but how do you know if your hormones aren't balanced?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I mentioned a couple of things that are very common, and generally it is things like that, like one, your period starts to change. That could be one indication, or it's not regular, and you would have learned that in the period talk, what regular looks like, or it could be. Sometimes it shows up in different ways that people don't always connect to hormones. So, for example, poor blood sugar balance. So, are you craving sugar constantly, right? Or are you craving salt in the mid-afternoon? Or are you waking up feeling really fatigued and tired and you really need like caffeine or something sweet to get you going? Those are all indications that your hormones can be a little bit off. A really common one I see is people getting a second wind later on in the day, like sort of 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And that's when they're like their most productive. That can be an indication that your hormones are a little bit off. And I know those aren't things that you typically look at first when you think about hormone balance. You might be thinking more, hot flashes, mood swings, even depression,
right?
Because those are sort of more reproductive hormone imbalances. But the prior symptoms are imbalances in your cortisol and your adrenaline and other hormones that are all about blood sugar balance, like insulin. So those are all hormones.
Right. And it's always so much a bigger picture. And I think we forget as humans, and I talk a lot about this. We did actually in our conversation together, is just it's biological, it's psychological, it's social in nature, right? And when it comes to your hormonal levels, it is a large amount of, there's a lot of context to it. There's a lot of details involved. So that's why to have someone like yourself who knows a little bit about it from past experience, but also in helping women, it just helps out that much more. So if I can just take a step back for a second, you and I have been in the industry for quite some time. And it always amazes me how it is still to this day, even though we live in the age of information, there's a lot of content out there. But why do you feel like people are really struggling to be healthy?
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And I think it's because, the world we're living in is very different than the world our grandparents were living in. We have a lot more challenges. I mean, even, sure, the toxins in our worlds, like if you take a look at the food additives or even, some of the chemicals in the products that we put on our skin or our bodies daily, that's a lot of stress to the body because the body then has to get rid of it. And so we've got a lot of stressors, even with our work lives and trying to do it all, right? We're wearing a million hats and we're moving at a very fast pace. And the number of decisions we make today is very different than the number of decisions someone would have had to make 40 years ago.
Right.
We're like, we make more decisions in the first 5 minutes of our day than someone did in their entire day back 40 years ago. And so that creates a lot of stress. Right. So many distractions with this amazing technology that we have at our fingertips. And this all can kind of layer in to create a stressed body. And that's not even talking about some of the things that are happening to our food in terms of the farming practices and our depleted soils. And I mean, there's just so many things that can cause stress to the body.
Right.
And especially the last 2 years, right? We've gone through a very stressful period, and that's sort of layering onto everything we already have on our plates. And so I think that's why people really struggle. And that's why it does help to sort of take a more holistic approach at their life and really figure out like, where do I need to focus to improve my health? Maybe it's food, sure, but maybe it's also the way you're setting your expectations for yourself. So that could be a piece of it as well. Like, for example, I was working with a client who she just had a baby. And she had these expectations of herself that she had to, keep working out because that was healthy, and that she should keep doing the 5 days a week like she's always done. But she was exhausted and she wasn't hitting her goals that she had set in her mind. And so she was always feeling like a failure. Well, even just that scenario is creating a lot of stress in your body.
Mhm.
And so what we did is we sort of took a step back and we redefined what did success look like for this mom, this new mom, in the area of exercise. So maybe it was just you hit your exercise goals if you walked your baby in the buggy 4 times a week. And that was a win, because when you start to feel more successful in those different areas of your life, that adds to your health, as well as, the food and all the other pieces
Yeah.
come into play.
It just goes to show, just in what you just mentioned there, how complex you were pulling from different pieces, right? From the stress to the expectations, to the goals and perhaps the outcomes, if you're not quite there, the pressure we put on ourselves. I'm trying to challenge my husband now, first thing in the morning, let's not turn on the phones. Let's not check our messages, right? So that we're just reducing just a little bit of that hyperactivity in the morning. The nervous system, right? So Linda, talking about hormonal health, what tips would you recommend for our participants on how to balance out hormones using food?
Yeah. So there is a lot you can do with food. And it's exciting to me because sometimes little shifts can have a powerful impact. And when it comes to food, I always like taking the philosophy of what can we add? Because generally when people aren't feeling that well, they're usually deficient in nutrition and their body is starving for nutrition. And if you're eating processed foods, even, not all processed foods, but some processed foods, odds are you are deficient in some minerals and vitamins. And when we can get that back into your body, you're going to start to feel better. And so some really simple changes. I actually really love it when people just add a great greens powder into your daily routine, or even just doing that every couple of days, because sometimes it is hard, especially for those people who are on the go, to get everything you need. So that's kind of a little cheat that I give some people who are feeling very busy and overwhelmed. Right. And so I like to have some shortcuts. And while I always recommend try to eat real food as often as possible, you know what? Our lives are busy. And so we want to kind of sneak some things in like that. A second thing I would say is to eat more protein, but also pay attention to how your body is digesting it. And here's the thing, like you could be eating the healthiest diet, but if your body is not breaking down your proteins or your fats or your carbs, guess what? You're not going to get those amino acids, which are important for building your hormones, for building your blood, for building your body. And a lot of people's digestive system is weakened. And that's actually one of the symptoms I didn't talk about with hormone imbalance. And that is digestive upset, bloating, gas. That can be an indication that your hormones are off.
Oh, actually, I would agree. That was, for me, that was a big aha moment from you. Was I didn't even take that into consideration. But now that we're working through it, it's absolutely making a huge impact. So good point. Are there, speaking of supplements, because I do love supplements, I have to say, even though I know it's great to get it through your daily intake, just as far as regular food, but what supplements or herbs would you recommend?
So there's some really supportive herbs for when you sort of hit your 40s and things are starting to feel a little bit off. One that I find most people are deficient in, not just me, but studies have found, is magnesium. And we're getting lots of calcium in our diets because that tends to be added to a lot of foods on the store shelves. And pay attention to that. You'll see that, like orange juice, added calcium, this added calcium. But yet we're not adding magnesium to anything. And the thing is, calcium and magnesium, they work together. Right? They have to be in the right ratio. So most of us are getting enough calcium, but not enough magnesium. And magnesium is important for so many things. Like one is it's calming. It's like your softening mineral.
Right.
And whereas calcium is your hardening mineral. So think about that in terms of heart health, right? Your heart is a muscle. Calcium can be hardening, magnesium softening. And think about that with even your muscles in terms of cramping. If anyone's getting cramping or twitching, that can be an indication that you might be low in magnesium. So it's also really great for sleep. And we've learned from a number of speakers how important sleep is.
Right.
It's not a sleep aid in the way that it's going to put you to sleep, but it's going to put your body into a place where it will fall asleep more easily because it's calmer. So it's really supportive, especially during times of stress.
Right.
And we burn through it a lot faster when we're stressed. And so sometimes, and that's one supplement I can safely recommend, and you're not going to hurt yourself by taking it, because if you get too much, you're just going to pee it right out anyway. So, so it's a safe one. I mean, there are definitely other herbs and supplements that we would look at based on your symptoms, but everyone is so unique. So it's really hard to say, everyone should be on a B complex or everyone should be doing maca powder. Maca is a really great energizing herb, and it's often used in midlife because it helps give you energy, but also supports your libido. So that's a powerful one, but there are 3 different types of maca. So you want to be making sure that you're using the right one for you based on what you're feeling,
Right.
or how you want to feel different. So those are fantastic. Always a good fish oil is a good idea. It's really hard to get your omega-3s through diet alone. And so omega-3s, so important for your health and your hormones. And and so those would be my favorites, most important ones. And your gut can be supported through foods as well.
Right. Now, this on a little side note, because I know I struggle with this myself, and I'm assuming there are others who do as well, but to be consistent about taking your supplements.
Yeah.
You have a little trick that might help myself and our listeners as to just to be a little more consistent.
Yeah. You know what? And I'm loving that you're asking this question, Gina, because this is actually one of the reasons I shifted into being a coach versus a nutrition. I'm still a nutrition, but I'm also a coach, because making lifestyle changes is hard, and it does take work, and it can be about creating new habits. And I'll tell you, the number of times I heard about people going to see like a naturopath, a nutritionist or whatever, and then they walked away with like a bottle of supplements, and then they finished the bottle, and then they're like, did that do anything? I don't know if it did. And then they stopped taking it, right? Because they didn't really understand what it was for, or B, they didn't really notice a difference. And so if you are, if you're buying it, and if you're putting your money out there into the supplement, make sure you know what it's doing, what it's supposed to do. And then, just be educated on that. And then I can help you build a habit of it. So usually what I tell people is to habit stack. So it's one of the easiest way to build a new habit is, so for example, let's say you always grab a glass of water in the morning. And what you might want to do is you might want to put those vitamins right beside where you grab your water. So we have like a Berkey system, and I always grab my water first thing in the morning. So that's where my supplements are. Because then it says Q, I'm going to get my water. So I'm just going to do my supplements at the same time.
Right.
And and another really simple tip is even sometimes getting on like an auto ordering system. If it's a supplement that you are going to be on for a while, for example, magnesium, because then that's going to sort of encourage you to order again. That's not a bad idea, because we're all busy, right? And that's just another thing to think about. It's like, magnesium.
Right.
So that can be helpful as well.
Okay.
And,
that's a fantastic, actually great tips, because that's probably, I would say, a good part of our society really tends to struggle with the behavioral piece around nutrition, right? And or hormonal health, or anything to do with our overall health. I know in our community too, we really struggle with the behavioral shifts. So those are great tips. So what about lifestyle and exercise? What sort of recommendations or tips would you give for exercise and hormonal health?
No, this is always the really juicy category, because it's different for everyone.
Right.
So I'll give you a couple examples. So sometimes we look at easy stuff like exercise. That's pretty easy. Like if someone is adrenally fatigued, for example, and I've got a free questionnaire. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but you guys can go grab it later.
Okay.
And you can figure out which hormone is off balance. But let's say your cortisol is off. That's your adrenals health. I wouldn't recommend going hard on cardio. So that's where I would say you want to go gentle, because exercise is now a stress to your body. And when you're adrenally fatigued, you do not need any more stress. You need to nourish with loads of, whole foods. You need to eat every 3 to 4 hours. Like there's certain things that you'll be doing if you're at that level, but and exercise is not going to help you. So I had one client who came to me because she wanted to lose some belly weight. And after working with her, so we were working on that goal. So we always want to get clear out what our goals are up front. So we define that. But as we talked a little bit more and I probed a little bit more, we realized that she was actually feeling quite dizzy and really fatigued after her runs. She loved running on Saturdays, and she would go for a nice long run. And she found that when she was getting home, she was pooped for the rest of the day and even the day after. And so that's when we discovered some other things going on. And she had a lot more symptoms that she really had no idea about, because you know what, we often focus on this, the things like our bellies.
Right.
And we don't realize some of these other symptoms that are happening. We sort of ignore them, right? We think, oh, well, it's normal, or I should feel this way because I'm stressed, but we don't get proactive with them. And so We worked with her and she stopped the running for and just a short period of time. We stopped the running. She started spending more time in nature, grounding, so hugging trees. She always says, Linda, I've hugged my trees today. I'm like, awesome. So for her lifestyle section, it was a little bit different. We gave her some things to do on meditation, and we worked on some beliefs around health. And because that's really huge as well, because it's digging back and what is your thinking about this thing?
Right.
Yeah. And so, especially if it's weight loss, we do the 5 whys. Like why is this so important to you?
Right.
Because sometimes it's not about the weight loss. Sometimes, right? Like, what do you want to feel? Maybe it's you just want to feel more confident, but maybe you can feel more confident in a different way.
Yeah.
But as well as the weight loss, like we could do it all, but it's really just about getting clear up front what our measure is so that we could then target the solutions. And like I said, the lifestyle section is different for everyone.
Absolutely. Well said. Really, truly. And just another great example of how, okay, I'm a little biased. I'm a coach too, but I think it's important. A coach really helps you pull through all the context and all the complexities, right?
Yeah.
Just like you said, you pulled from understanding, okay, so what is the psychology about it? What is it that she's looking for? What are her expectations? We are so deeply rooted in what we know from the past, right? And exercise in the past was all about going hard and going to the gym. And like you said, there's so many, it's going to be, never is it going to be a one size fits all. And so that was,
and it's hard, and it's hard work, right? Like for her to let go of that long run was a really hard thing to do.
Right.
So we had to really work on the education side of it so that she understood what physiologically was happening in her body. So she's like, oh yeah. And then she felt the difference. So she wasn't dizzy anymore. She didn't have the jitters. And so she totally noticed the difference. And now she's better at recognizing it on her own.
Right.
So she has incorporated the running back, but she knows when she has to scale it back. But it's true, right?
It's such an amazing process. It is a process though. And you're right. I think you have to go into it understanding that this is going to take some time and a deeper dive. Like but you're giving her such a big picture, which is really, really important for understanding your overall health. So well said, Linda. So just as we tend to, or we're sort of winding things down here, what is one thing everyone can do today to improve their health?
I'm going to say improve your digestion. I am a nutritionist by nature. And honestly, there is so much power in improving your digestion. If you're going to be spending money on buying good quality foods, you may as well make sure that you're actually utilizing all of those amazing building blocks that come in that food. Like our food creates us. So we want it to work for us.
Right.
And interestingly enough, digestion has some deep meaning to it as well. And your digestion can sort of indicate how you're digesting your life. Right. So just think about that for a minute, right? Like what's happening with your digestion is very reflective of what's going on. You'll often hear about like nutritionists, you may have heard this in some of the talks, is when your autonomic system is balanced, we call it rest and digest. Like you can't digest when you're stressed up here. You have to be down here to really digest well. And that's also where the healing happens.
Right.
So I would say improve your digestion.
Oh, fantastic. And reach out to you. Now you had mentioned earlier, there was a link to, was it your workbook or to something that our listeners
the quiz. Actually, so I have a free quiz.
Okay.
And there's one category around cortisol. And if you have a lot of check boxes in there, then know that your digestion probably needs help, because when your cortisol is high, your digestion is not getting any attention and love from your body, because your body is just trying to survive. And so your digestion is one of those systems that it's not that important to keep you alive.
Right.
And so it's going to get zero time and attention. And so that's just another indication that you might want to work on that digestion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where do they find this quiz?
So I'll put the link down here.
Okay. Sounds good.
Just grab that.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Well, Linda, I have learned a ton, as I always do when I talk to you. So thank you so much for your time today and for pulling all of these amazing speakers together as well. It's been a lot of fun.
It was truly amazing working all of you incredible speakers. It was just so much fun. And I also learned so much. So thank you everyone for joining us. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and we will meet you back over in the Facebook group to continue our learning.
Fantastic.
All right. Take care, everyone.